All right, everybody, welcome back to the show. So excited today. We have one of the most well-known people in our industry, Dan Kravitz, with us today. Dan has a history of really, pioneering the cash balance industry and really guiding and influencing all of us to know how to do this better. I know many advisors have maybe heard the idea of a cash balance. Very few, I think, specialize in it. So I'm really excited to hear more about Dan. Dan, thank you for being on the show. Welcome here.
Great. Thanks, Jay. Good morning, everybody. Looking forward to talking cash balance.
Dan, I want to jump in. I know I read a little bit of your history. I know your dad actually started the firm, right? And you kind of got pulled into it that way? Tell me what that was like growing up with your dad running Kravitz.
Yeah. So my dad was an actuary, and he started the firm in 1977 as a small actuarial firm here in Los Angeles. With the premise that traditional defined benefit plans back then could help small businesses. A lot of entertainment clients here in LA use traditional defined benefit plans to reduce their tax liability. So it was really taking what a lot of the larger actuarial firms were doing back east in pension plans and trying to figure out a way to use those plans to help small businesses. So it was pretty innovative, and it wasn't that far from what we're doing today with cash balance. As tax law changed, those traditional defined benefit plans became more difficult to accomplish those tax liability reductions. And the market, and including our firm back in the late 80s, early 90s, shifted into the 401k market. So we like everyone, saw the writing on the wall, saw traditional defined benefit plans not necessarily looking like maybe the future for the retirement programs of most companies in this country. And we saw a shift to 401k. That was in the early 90s when I joined the firm. And I was a lowly admin. In fact, I started at, I was 13 years old, typing Form 5500s, worked my way up in the file room, was a lowly administrator, administrating plans during Monday through Thursday, doing my loans and withdrawals on Friday, and then crossing my fingers that it all went well when I got home on the weekend.
That's fascinating. So when you were growing up and your dad was doing this and building this business, was it a topic that pretty much he would always be going on about 401k plans being the next big thing? Was it, did he kind of leave work at work, or what kind of, what was that like at home?
Yeah, so great question, Jake. So he was convinced the business was doomed. It was quite the opposite. He was convinced that the pension plan business was, with tax law changes, it was gonna go away. This is before 401k, and he told me and my brother to stay away from this business, go find something else to do, and he even was contemplating, his future, thinking that the business would eventually disappear. But the 401k program suddenly became very popular. He, like everyone else, got on that bandwagon and figured out a way to help businesses set up salary deferral plans. So as employers shifted, helping their employees save for retirement, and really had a lot to do with the cost of health benefits, believe it or not. As the cost of health care became so expensive, most employers realized they couldn't afford both pension and health care. So the 401k was a great solution because it was no longer going to be funded primarily by the employer. It was funded by the employees. So it was a big shift. So that sort of saved the business, if you will, his business and many other actuarial firms and TPAs, as something new and innovative that they could bring to the marketplace. I was a math major and a human physiology major, so I gravitated to businesses like that, and I ended up working for my dad back in the early 90s, and we had a good relationship working well together. And we were in the 401k business and doing defined benefit on the side. And, as time shifted and as big companies like Fidelity got into the 401k business, it started to really put a lot of pressure on small companies. And I kind of, as I was moving up in the company, I started to see the writing on the wall that 401k was a great opportunity to keep the business going, but we couldn't compete with Fidelity and the big payroll companies and the big insurance companies, and we were clearly going to be squeezed out of the market. And there was this thing called new comparability that my dad actually coined. He actually named it, and it became very popular. That, right? He named it. He gave a presentation at the USC Tax Institute and coined the term. new comparability. There was this technique called comparability, which was very similar to new comparability. What new comparability is a way to allocate profit sharing contributions in a 401k plan such that more of the allocation can go to certain participants, usually the owners, high net worth individuals, the executives. So it was, that was, I kind of saw the writing on the wall. Oh, here's something that we could do and add value, and that Fidelity and the insurance companies didn't have the software, weren't really equipped yet to bring that solution. So we quickly focused on new comparability. I made the strategic decision as I started to get into the management of the company that we need to get out of the 401k record keeping business. We need to move away from that. We need to focus on new comparability. And that got us through the 90s. And sure enough, big insurance companies, Fidelity, they're pretty smart companies. They got a lot of resources, and they too decided to get into that business. So they kind of followed us and other small TPAs and other actuarial firms. They would treat that as a loss leader and give away new comparability as long as you were willing to give them their assets, let them do the record keeping on their 401k plan. So we needed something innovative and strategic, and that's where I had the idea that we should focus on cash balance plans. It was very risky, Jake, because before 2006, before the Pension Protection Act was passed, there was a lot of legal concerns around cash balance. In fact, people were convinced that what we were doing might even be illegal, that might be age discriminatory. There's a very famous cash balance plan sponsored by IBM that went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, where the participants sued their employer to argue that this plan was age discriminatory. And we decided to gamble a little bit, and we felt that, with the help of our lobbyists, and I even went to Washington, D.C. with the former head of the IRS and lobbied on behalf of our industry with the help of Brian Graff that cash balance was something that made sense for this country. It was a way to keep pension plans going, because without cash balance, pension plans were dead. Right. And so we were very lucky. The Pension Protection Act was passed in 2006 that made these plans legal, gave us a playbook on how to design and administer these plans and meet the rules, and we were getting what's called favorable determination letters on our plans. So I was very fortunate because we made that gamble. Once the law was passed, we were already a couple of steps ahead of our competition. We already built processes and procedures, created software to administer these plans, and when that law was passed, it really took off, Jake. We went from about 1,000 cash balance plans in this country to 30,000 plans real quickly after 2006.
I don't think people realize how new it is. I mean, 2006 isn't that long ago. That's amazing.
Yeah. So so the cash balance started with Bank of America, did the first one in '84, but from '84 to 2006, it was really used not for the purpose that we use them today as a way to help business owners and people increase their retirement savings and reduce their tax liability. Bank of America, IBM, and all these big companies were using them to get rid of their traditional defined benefit plan. They would convert their old pension plan into a cash balance plan with the objective to eventually get rid of that as well and go to 401k. But they were using cash balance really as a stepping stone to help their participants get comfortable with leaving the pension world and going into the 401k world. We saw an opportunity, though, to use cash balance for small businesses, particularly profitable professional service companies, to use them to get past those 401k limits, to put a lot more into a retirement program than what the 401k profit sharing would allow. Back then, the limits were $30,000 a year, and I could use a cash balance plan to help a business owner put another $200,000 away for retirement. And the primary motivator, Jake, and this is really good for people that are thinking about getting into this business, it's not about retirement accumulation, even though that's what I wish it was about. It's about tax liability reduction. The motivation for most small businesses is to use cash balance to reduce their tax liability. That's motivation one. And the secondary benefit, it's a great way to accumulate for retirement.
Yeah, no, that's a message that I'm constantly trying to help physicians, which is my main target, understand, because they've been so familiar with the 401k, how that works and how they invest it themselves. And they love that aspect of it. And then you throw the cash balance in there. It takes, 2 or 3 meetings before they finally grasp, oh, so this is just the tax strategy, put the money away. Then we'll figure out how to invest it differently down the road when we can roll it out and make different changes there. But in the plan itself, it's pretty limited on what the return is going to be. And so that's where I think few people get hung up on that, and they don't see the power behind the tax benefit initially. So that to me is the hardest thing for an advisor to really be able to communicate well. And that's something I'm trying to help more advisors do. And partnering with a good TPA is a really key factor in that, because they'll be able to help them get that story out. And you guys basically started that story. That's the fascinating thing. I mean, that's what's great about your brand is so strong in this space. And it sounds like it really kind of stemmed from that 2006, when you went all in on this. And at that time, do you have your own documents? Because I know most TPAs don't have their own document. They use a software. They use, there's multiple softwares out there. How has Kravitz tackled that? Because you kind of pioneered a few things like the new comparability. How do you manage the plan document?
Yeah, so great question, Jake. So no doubt what was frustrating when we first started getting into cash balance, there wasn't much I could purchase to do these plans properly. So what you would do oftentimes is take the administrative software or the document software. You would buy that and try to jerry rig it for cash balance. Right. And it didn't work well. So we actually had we had programmers working for us. We had lawyers working for us, writing legal documents. So we had our own plan document. We even to this day still have our own proprietary software to do the administration. One differentiator that I'm very proud of is we have a participant portal where a cash balance participant can go online and view their hypothetical account, and we update those accounts every day with that guaranteed interest crediting rate. I tried to do that originally with some of the 401k software, and we tried it for a while, and it just didn't work well. It didn't work well to take software designed for traditional defined benefit plans or software designed for 401k plans and use them for cash balance. Instead, we had to build our own. So that was really successful. And you said one thing, you're focusing on medical groups. I just want to point out 1/3 of all cash balance plans are sponsored by medical. And in fact, if you want to get real specific, it's specialty groups, radiologists, cardiologists, anesthesiologists. I like to joke when I speak around the country on this. I was in a motorcycle accident. I broke my left shoulder. I sold 2 cash balance plans, one to the anesthesiology group that put me under and one to the orthopedic surgeon that repaired my shoulder. So that's, in terms of where advisors want to focus, medical groups, law firms, profitable professional service companies, great way to focus. And Jake, you said something else that's near and dear to my heart. Forget the I know these advisors, and I get it. And doctors too, they want to quickly get to the investment return and focus on that. That's not what this is about. You're going to get a 50% return on your money, depending on where you live in the country, just on the tax savings. So everyone needs a conservative portion of their portfolio. It's going to be invested conservatively. It's going to have a guaranteed rate of return of somewhere around 4%. If you want to be aggressive and hit home runs, use your 401k account, use your other wealth management accounts, get a little more aggressive there. This is going to be a conservative portfolio. But you're right, Jake. I've done many medical group meetings with advisors, and there's always one doctor in the group, one advisor who gets caught up. 4% return, that's really low. I could earn 20%. Why would I do this? And I think a good advisor, if they can educate the client about the tax savings, that's going to pay for the plan. That's why we're doing this. It's not about trying to get 20% returns on the investments.
Exactly right. And that's why I focus so much more on tax, because any person, we can talk about what the market will do or can do, but we don't know. That's the difference. And so I really don't focus a lot on that. I focus more on, we do know your tax rate. We can figure that out. We can figure out what you will save. And that's, literally as close to a promise guarantee that we can get. We're not going to guarantee anything else, but we know we can save you here. And so that's the strength behind the cash balance plan, because as you earn more, and what I love about it is when I help physicians, they're coming from a real interesting history of working so hard and starving themselves financially for so long. And then they go into this debt, and then they all of a sudden get thrown at the highest tax bracket. And then what do? They're stuck with a real problem there. And if they don't act smart on a tax strategy, they'll never get out of that hole. And it's sad to see that. And so I'm really passionate about helping physicians because they do so much for us and our families. This is one way that I feel like I can give back and help them. And it drives me every day. So I love that you're feeling, along that same lines. How have you kept up with this for so long? I mean, you've been head of Kravitz for like 25 plus years. I mean, how have you kept at it? Is this something that you just love that much, or you had times where you thought, man, I don't know if I can keep going? How has it been for 25 years?
No, thanks for the question, Jake. I love this business. I love cash. I mean, same thing as you. First, I'm very motivated. I feel like I wake up every morning, I'm helping people, helping people like doctors and lawyers and people that have created a lot of student debt, gotten into, really people don't realize this. These people that are suddenly making good money, they weren't, have a problem to solve. That, they're being faced with high taxes. They want to pay off their student loans. They want to start saving for retirement. So I'm driven like you are by the fact that I'm helping people. I find cash balance to be extremely sexy. I mean, to be honest with you, it's a blue ocean. And for your advisors that are thinking about blue ocean versus red ocean, when I was in the 401k market, I got a little frustrated because I always felt it was about taking business away from someone else for me to be successful. A lot of times I was judged based on pricing and not based on my ability to add value. So that was sort of a red ocean way of doing business. Blue ocean, where there wasn't much competition, where I was creating something new with an advisor for a client that wasn't there before. No one was losing business in order for me to help a client set up a cash balance plan and stock away money. And on an ongoing basis, I learn something new every day. I'm surrounded by actuaries are really smart people, much smarter than me, and I learn a lot from the advisors I work with and the clients I work with. So tax law is also constantly changing. I think now is a great time to get into this business. I think there is a good chance, I'm not going to get political here, that we might get a new administration where tax policy is likely to change.
Yeah.
And if tax policy changes the way I think they're predicting, there's going to be even a greater need for cash balance. I did a webcast back in 2018 about the new tax law that passed in the end of 17, early 18, and how to use cash balance to take advantage of a new code section, Section 199A. It's on my website, cashbalancedesign.com, how you can use cash balance funds to reduce your adjusted gross income and help clients become eligible for this new tax deduction. I don't have time to get into it with you today, but if you want to, I have a webcast on it, Section 199A, and you get a 20% below the line tax deduction. So it doubled the power of cash balance. Fast forward to today with potentially a new tax regime where they're going to increase the marginal rate on people that earn more than $400,000. Cash balance is a great tool it's above the line deduction, the best type of deduction, reduce your client's AGI below $400,000, will avoid the new high marginal rate, will get to take advantage of that Section 199A new deduction we got in 2018, and of course all the other powers of cash balance, accumulating money in a tax-deferred vehicle that helps save for retirement. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, when I say Section 199A, definitely go to cashbalancedesign.com. I have a 1-hour webcast just on that topic, on how cash balance could help your clients become eligible for this new, and a lot of people don't realize it's there, 20% below the line tax deduction.
Yeah, that's like QBI, right? Is that what the other term is? Yeah. So the 326. Yep. Yeah, we get into that all the time, and that's a huge one that if people don't grasp what's going on there, and they miss out on that 20%, I mean, you're leaving a lot of money on the table that could be yours. So the cash balance is really one of the only tools to do it, to get you there. So we're constantly helping people get there. That's awesome.
Above the line tax deductions are the best. CPAs and tax advisors tell me that's what cash balance will do.
Yeah, and that's the tricky part is most CPAs are very focused on compliance, doing it right? They're not strategic for the most part. They're not going to say, oh, did you know about this? And that's where I think 401k advisors have a real opportunity, because you're in a spot of trust where if you know what you're talking about and you can actually educate the client and then wrap in their CPA and talk about where we are on things, I mean, that's real value. That's actually something that's going to lock you in for a long time as their advisor, which you're not going to lose to someone that's going to come and try and undercut you by 5 basis points. Like, that's ridiculous. So this is how you compete. You bring value, you bring actual tax savings strategies, and ultimately you'll shine. So what are some ideas or tips for advisors that have maybe never done a cash balance plan? It's so new to them. They're kind of nervous. What ideas would you give them to get started? Where would they go?
Yeah, so a couple of things that we created to help advisors. I wrote a book called Beyond the 401k, how advisors can use cash balance plans to grow their business. If you go to Amazon, I think the Kindle version is like $9, and the hard copy I think is $20. It's a good 2-hour read. We also have something called the Cash Balance Coach. It's a 4-hour training program for advisors and other retirement professionals. Cash Balance 101 teaches you the basics. 201 is advanced design. Cash Balance Investments talks about how the investments work, and Cash Balance Sales and Marketing talks about how to grow your business as an advisor using cash balance. It's a 4-hour training program on our website. We charge $199 for the program. We don't make any money on it. It really pays for the setting up the courses. They're web-based courses. You can take them at your own pace, at your own time, and then there's a test at the end, and we'll issue a certification. And some advisors even put that certification on their business cards. I've heard CBC, Cash Balance Consultant. So those are 2 good resources. If you just, you don't want to read the book, you don't want to go through the program, just go to our website, cashbalancedesign.com. A whole bunch of free material on there, case studies, great history of the program.
Yeah, you guys
every year I publish an annual.
I mean, I've referred to it so many times in a lot of meetings where I'm just trying to see what's the max we potentially could put away for somebody just by looking at their age. Like, I look at that graph all the time. So yeah, there's tons of good content on your website.
Yeah, and every year I publish an annual research report where I talk about what happened in the prior year with the 30,000 cash balance plans as we move forward to 35,000 cash balance plans. So there's lots of good stuff out there. Kravitz and Future Plan are definitely good resources. There's a lot of other good, as cash balances become more popular, as we move from 2006 to 2020, there's a lot of good actuarial firms out there that now do cash balance. People like yourself, Jake, and other people are starting to learn about this. So I'm excited that you're out there and other people are out there. I used to felt I was a lone voice out there back in the early days talking cash balance, and I would typically go meet with a client and they go, I've never heard of this. Is this legal? And why aren't others talking about it? And fast forward, 15 years later, and now it's becoming very popular and in vogue with professional service companies. And one other thing I like to mention for an advisor, it's a great differentiator. It's a great way, we say this during the coach program, it's a great way to get out of the HR room and into the boardroom. Suddenly, what I enjoy about it is now I'm an important advisor to the business owner. His lawyer, his accountant, his financial advisor, and his TPA. We're on the top list of vendors, helping that client. I enjoy that role, as opposed to, a 401k plan, unfortunately, is relegated down to HR. It's not considered an important benefit to the owner. It's really for his employees and not for the owner. And I don't necessarily agree with that, but unfortunately, that's the view of a lot of business owners.
That's the culture.
So they don't really care about it.
Yeah. And I struggle with that too, because HR, and I know they mean well. I know they're trying to create culture and brand and have people have loyalty. And to me, the tax benefits of 401k and cash balance just get lost in that noise. And the business owner kind of forgets about it. And so I love that idea of becoming part of that strategy meeting, whatever that executive team is doing around strategy. It needs to be thought through from a tax standpoint, because there's a lot of savings there. What are some mistakes though? Like, if I'm sure you've seen a lot of real messy plans or things that were totally wrong and you had to come in and clean them up. What are some mistakes you would say just help us avoid so we don't go on the same path?
Yeah, so 2 big mistakes. First, I'll talk about a sales mistake that I made in the early days, and I want to encourage advisors to avoid. Oftentimes, an advisor, will get past the HR person and get in front of the business owner to tell the cash balance story.
Mm-hmm.
And who's the first person that client's going to typically call to validate this? Oftentimes it's the CPA. And I, in the past, would not make an effort to get to know who that CPA was and get in front of that CPA early in the process. And so what would happen to me and my advisor is that a CPA would do one of two things. They would often tell a very negative story about an experience they had with a pension plan and tell the client to avoid it at all costs because of one bad experience that CPA had. Or the CPA would say, don't work with Dan and that advisor. I have my own team of cash balance experts that I want you to work with. So my tip is, find out, before you go into the meeting with that business owner, maybe find out who the CPA is. Get them on your team. That way they endorse you as opposed to compete with you. And also a CPA, like Jake, you said earlier in the podcast, is a great resource for maybe selling a cash balance plan to his firm. 10% of all cash balance firms are sponsored by accounting groups. So that's a great potential prospect. And then they're not great marketers, but CPAs are trusted advisors, and they might have a whole plethora of prospects for you as the advisor. So that's one mistake I made in the past. With design mistakes, a typical design mistake, I don't see it as much today as I used to see it, is remember the cash balance plan is for the business owners typically and for the executives. And we can pass testing by creating most of the benefits in the 401k profit sharing plan for the employees. And particularly as you go up market, you can, depending on the demographics, exclude all the employees from the cash balance plan and only include the business owners. But by doing that, it makes the cash balance plan a lot more flexible and user-friendly. But a lot of my colleagues don't know how to do that. And we call it a carve-out design. They won't carve out the employees from the cash balance plan, and they'll just throw them all in there. In fact, there's one medical group, I'll never forget it, in Kansas City that I met with that I think it was about 30 or 40 shareholder doctors and about 250 employees. And they included all 250 employees in the cash balance plan unnecessarily. Created additional cash balance contribution costs, created all sorts of additional filing requirements. We terminated that plan and started a new one without all those employees. But that medical group was really upset that that plan was designed originally that way. And I told them that they could have originally excluded all those employees and just covered the shareholder doctors. They really enjoyed the new design, but they were disappointed with the prior team in designing it that way. Oh, and another issue is the guaranteed interest crediting rate. A lot of firms used to use the 30-year treasury rate, and a lot of us have moved to a fixed rate, typically of 4 or 5%. I don't have time to get into it today, but I personally prefer a fixed rate of 4.
And you can't get over 6, right? Is that the IRS cap?
Correct.
Right. Okay.
Correct. We can't go past 6. There's reasons why you don't want to get as high as 6. We think the sweet spot is 4. But as you go up market, particularly as advisors, those of you that are listening to this podcast and have sold a couple of cash balance and you want to know how to, be a step ahead, you need to learn something called actual rate of return or market rate of return. As you go up market and you work with larger medical groups, larger law firms, you're going to be able to differentiate yourself by using what we call the market rate of return or the actual rate of return of the portfolio as that guaranteed interest crediting rate. It's something that became available in 2010. And then when we got final regs in 2014, we just recently got a real clear pathway on how to do that. In fact, Jake, I'll even share this with you. There is even a way to create multiple portfolios in one cash balance plan and assign participants, maybe older doctors to a more conservative portfolio and younger doctors to a more aggressive portfolio. And so this cash balance plan using actual rate of return as the interest crediting rate looks a little more like a 401k plan. The choice of the portfolio is an employer choice, not a participant choice, so it's not participant directed, but you can get really sophisticated. Again, I don't want to burden your listeners with too many other webcasts, but there's another webcast on my website, Cash Balance Design, where I talk about how to go up market, how to use actual rate of return. In our Cash Balance Coach program in this 201 section, my colleague, I believe Kevin Palm, reviews that with our our coach trainees as well during the training program. Also, I wrote a couple articles about that. So
That's a
great
huge
tip
deal.
for your advisors that want to get advanced.
Yeah, that's a big deal because that's where a lot of physicians and a lot of high earners get caught up, is that when you tell them, well, it's going to only get 4%, they stop and they pause because that's not enough in their mind. And so this is a way you can kind of maneuver around that a little bit and get a little more of their interest. Yep. And you're totally right. We just got introduced to that pretty recently, and it's a fascinating way to have the design. It's a little bit tricky to communicate better on what that return will be, because you're not only involving the investment account, you're also got to work with the actuary to pinpoint what number they're going to use. And then you've got to be able to explain that to a variety of people in the plan, why the return is what it is. But it's a balancing act. That's the hardest part, is if you get too much return, I mean, you eventually have an overfunded or a surplus in there that you might have to make some adjustments, and you won't be able to get the big tax savings down the road. So that's always the tough part about the cash balance, is there's a reason we don't want to shoot for the fences on a return, because we need that tax savings each year. That's the power. So explaining that in a simplified way to someone that wants to really understand it well is tough thing to do. And you just get better with practice, and you get more under your belt, you get a little more experience. And then comes what you said. You brought up the term, where you terminate a plan and started a new one. That is becoming more of a hot topic on our side as well. And that's where I'm still trying to get really good clarity on when that makes sense and when it doesn't, and how to do that properly. And that all goes back to people wanting to get the money out so they can invest it how they want to. Yep. Can you talk about that real quick? Just kind of your thoughts around the idea of a terminating a plan and starting a new one, and the reasons behind doing that?
Yeah, no, I'd love to. We call it strategic plan termination. I'm with you, Jake. It's become extremely popular. Again, particularly with my larger clients. We have clients, large law firms, large medical groups typically, that have had a cash balance plan for 10 years or more, and they want to terminate it and start a new one. It's costly. It's a lot of work. Why would you go through that? Two main reasons. One is people want access to that money. A lot of these lawyers and doctors love the idea of taking the money out of the cash balance plan and moving it to the 401k plan, or maybe moving it to an IRA with their financial advisor, and having more flexibility on the investments. The second reason is getting that liability off the books. As these plans grow, I have some plans with $100 million in it, and the CFO is looking at quite a big potential liability, as we have underfunding and overfunding issues to contend with. So that gets a little nerve-wracking as the assets really start to grow. And the idea of getting that off the employer's books and into participant-directed accounts is very appealing to these larger companies. So we kind of have a rule of thumb. We typically, anytime we have a client that's had their plan for 10 years or more. Now, why 10 years? Because there's this thing called the Permanence Rule. Technically, these plans are supposed to be permanent, and you're not supposed to start and stop them. What we found is, once the plan is 10 years old, we have a sort of a safe harbor, if you will. We know that the IRS won't challenge us on a plan termination. However, with that said, I've actually terminated a lot of cash balance plans and started new ones less than 10 years. The only caveat is we recommend that you get what's called a favorable determination letter. And I hate to do this to you, Jake, but I have another webcast just on strategic plan termination. And we talk about, how to design the second cash balance plan to meet the IRS requirements. If it was audited, they'll want to know why you had one plan, let's say, for 5 years, and then you started another plan in year 6. There's ways to do that. You need to have good business reasons and other reasons why you're stopping and starting, and we can help our clients come up with that. But, the two sexy things, and you asked me why I've been doing this so long, this is new stuff, Jake. What you're asking me about, actual rate of return is the interest crediting rate, or market rate of return as some of other people like to call it, and strategic plan termination. Both of those have only been in vogue for the last couple of years. And it's exciting that you even heard of it, because, we used to go around the country and talk about strategic plan termination. No one had any idea what I talked about. So I just said, hey, I can get all the money out of the plan and hand it over to the participants and let them self-direct it. Oh, we want that. And we would kind of guide them through it. And, you know, we've been doing it so long now that we've learned working with the government what they like to see, what they don't like to see. So I would just counsel advisors out there, find a good actuarial, if it's not Kravitz and Future Plan, find a good actuarial firm and as you do your due diligence, make sure they have experience. You know, we administer thousands of these cash balance plans. You know, some other firms will say, yeah, we do it too, but they've only done 25 cash balance plans. Definitely find someone that has good experience. Because when I take over cash balance plans from some of these other third-party administrators, I do find issues that I have to clean up because, you know, they're really good 401k administrators. They're sort of new to cash balance. In fact, I maybe even have trained them, but they haven't done enough of them to do them successfully. So I'm not saying you have to work with Kravitz or Future Plan, but definitely make sure you're working. And there are other firms out there that are really good at this too. Yeah,
and I want to hit on two things that you said. So going back to the idea of a strategic termination, that to me is another. It almost needs to be kind of thought through in the initial stages, because then you will get people past that 4%, or if you're doing the variable credit rate, it gets them over that fact of, well, okay, so this is only for a short amount of time. They'll put more in and they'll benefit more on a tax side of things. So I've seen it benefit that way. But also what you were saying, and I think this is good to be kind of clarify, when you do a cash balance plan, you need an actuary. And this is something that I'm fascinated to see where the industry takes it in the next 5-10 years, because we're seeing a lot of technology and automation and artificial intelligence, all those things going into the 401k plan. And the two places that I still have a ton of manual work done and have to wait on human capital to do things for me is, one, the audit, which I don't really want to get into that today, but the audit I think has real potential to be automated and have some technology involved. But the cash balance, so working with an actuary, because you would think at this point it would be like black and white, you know, like this is the number, this is how old people are, this is how much they make, give us the illustration. It's not. I mean, there is still some art to it that I think is really important to understand from an advisor standpoint and be able to explain that. What are your thoughts around that whole, what will technology bring to cash balance down the road, do you think?
Yeah, no, great question, Shake. You know, first I'll just tell an old actuary joke. The reason why it's a little bit of art and not all science, if you ask an actuary what 2 + 2 is, we'll ask you, well, what do you want it to be? You know what I mean? And the reason why I say that is, you know, if I had 10 different actuaries run 10 different illustrations, you're probably going to get different results and different varying results. Now, that has changed quite a bit. The government, as regulations have changed over time, you know, they put a lot of constraints on actuaries in terms of what they can do and what they can't do. If I think back to 1977, when my dad started our company, a lot of this was done based on very subjective, based on the actuary, and it was almost all art and very little science. And my dad and other actuaries back then would pretty much come up with the designs themselves. And there wasn't much in terms of IRS rules and regulations. So they had a lot of flexibility in terms of what they did with these programs. Fast forward to today, there's not nearly as much flexibility. There is definitely a recipe book that we need to follow, but there's definitely a little wiggle room there because and that's why, Jake, you see, as you produce illustrations, you might get varying results. With regards to technology, it's coming slowly. There's about 800,000 or so 401k plans in this country. There's only 35,000 cash balance plans in this country. So there is, unfortunately, a lot of big companies out there building great technology resources for cash balance. But that's changing. We've surpassed $1 trillion in those 35,000 cash balance plans. So the assets are there, which is motivating a lot of big companies now to look at this. So companies like Fidelity and Schwab and, you know, large insurance companies that, you know, felt this was too small to bother with are now starting to take a new look at cash balance. And with that, I would expect, you know, if I was to guess, just based on past experience with 401k, with new comparability, 5 years from now, Jake, I wouldn't be surprised if some of the larger companies are bringing better technology solutions to make these plans a little more user-friendly for the advisor and for the client. But with that said, you know, some things, in my mind, some things that add a lot of benefit, create a lot of tax deductions, it might be worth putting up with, a little more manual labor, if you will, to get things done. I'm using a proprietary, I've tried to use the software. I felt bad for anyone that wants to get into this business on the actuarial side, because there isn't a lot of good technology you can purchase to quickly ramp up. I like that because it keeps my competitors at bay, but it definitely prevents for a lot of other people to get in the market. It's a great, innovative definitely technology innovation is something we need. With that said, it's much better today for the advisor and for the client than it was when I first started doing this. It would take me months to do things that now I can get done in days with computers and technology. So we're getting better at it. I'll just say in advance for those advisors that are new to cash balance, be patient with your actuarial firm. Things that you think should be turned around in days might take weeks. You do need an actuary to certify the calculations. And some of that is still somewhat manual and requires, we're still not quite in the 21st century. 401k is the opposite. Everything is, AI and, 401k is definitely light years ahead of cash balance plans when it comes to using technology to better provide solutions to the marketplace. But, I think 3 to 5 years from now, that's all going to be changed. I used to do no comparability by hand with my HP calculator, and all that stuff now is done automatically, with computers. Wow. I would expect the same with cash balance. It's just going to take some more time.
Yeah. And so that's where it's good to understand who you're working with and spend some time knowing the TPAs that you're working with, because you really can't, it's not going to be an effective relationship if you have a bundled 401k and then you want to add a cash balance to it. I promise you that's going to be a nightmare you don't want to deal with. So finding good TPAs that have actuaries working with them, like actually working for them, not outsourced, has been a key for us. And when you want to get into this business, you got to think a little bit, a couple more steps down the road than the client's ever even thinking, so that you can recommend the right steps now so they can make the right steps in the future without too many pivots. Because if you go bundled now, but you want to add cash balance, you think in a couple of years, and you got to go through all this work, it's going to be putting your relationship at risk, because it doesn't appear that kind of where they should be going. So not that you can do every step all in one day. That's the key, is you've got to kind of take the client through that path. So I'm excited to see where technology goes. I know that's kind of the first phase. When you start explaining cash balance, you've got to give them the real numbers, and you can give them concrete data based on a census, and then they start to really grasp the power behind it. And that's what's great about having a good TPA on your side that has an actuary working for you. So that's the first step I would tell you if you haven't done these. And if you've done these, that is the case. So to wrap things up, I know you've got to get to the meeting, but I want to talk about the future of Kravitz. You were recently acquired by Future Plan, and which is part of a census, which runs all the plans for Vanguard. I mean, there's a whole lot of acquisitions going on in our marketplace, and we've seen what Empower's doing. We've seen how Fidelity's growing. Tell me a little bit about that decision and the reason behind it, and the future, kind of what's exciting about that coming together, I think, with a lot of other TPAs and under a census and Future Plan.
Yeah, no, great question, Jake. Yeah, definitely. In 2017, I was approached by the folks at the census if I was interested in selling the firm. It wasn't for sale, and actually, be truthful, I said no 3 times before I said yes. But they painted a picture. They demonstrated to me, I was a small firm with 100 employees, and no doubt we were the nation's leader in cash balance plans, but we still only had a small percent of the marketplace. I think I had about 5% of the overall marketplace. I was an unusual player. I wasn't, focusing on the small plans. I wasn't focusing on the large plans. I was doing a lot of the mid-sized companies. So Kravitz was a great resource. But at the same time, we were doing a lot of innovative things that got the attention of everybody. I had to make a choice to either really invest in the company to grow it, to get our national brand out there more than I was doing, or to partner with someone to do it. And the census, told me they had a vision for cash balance that I shared. They felt we could be a dominant force, take a bigger market share, provide a better solution. And so fast forward to today, it's been 3.5 years. I'm in charge of all things cash balance for a census and future plan. We have more actuaries. We administer more cash balance plans than any firm in the country. And I'm really excited what the future holds. I think as we build out our cash balance solution, I don't think we'll have much, competition. There's a lot of small players out there, like you said, Jake, that outsource the actuarial work to a contract actuary. That's really hard to do successfully to meet the needs of advisors and clients with today's demands in terms of turnaround time, in terms of what the expectations are. And then the larger actuarial firms that I'm competing with, they really don't have the tools and resources built out yet to handle these small, mid-sized cash balance plans the way we do. They're really focusing on the Fortune 500 companies that have those old cash balance plans, IBM, FedEx, John Hancock, Manulife Financial, those companies that have those really large plans are really their focus. That's a completely different animal. So their skill set is quite different than ours. So I think we're really poised to add a lot of value, and we've been really supportive of educating, those financial advisors that want to get into this business with us. Our coach program, the book I wrote, our annual report, our website. We're all about giving away a lot of free resources to the marketplace, and you're not required to work with us if you use those resources, but we know that we have compelling reasons to partner with our firm.
Do you think that's a big reason your brand is so strong? It's just because you've been putting out so much content. It's kind of where everyone goes with their questions, and then they find Kravitz?
Yeah, thanks, Jake, for that question. Yeah, I think the brand. I think a couple of reasons why we were able to really. We got into the marketplace earlier than everybody else, so we were there pretty early. I made sure that whenever a law was passed, anything about cash balance, I wanted to be the first person out there to write the article, make sure that we were did the first webcast. So we were always first to market and made sure that we were the market thought leader in cash balance. And at one time, believe it or not, I was sort of the tallest midget in the room. I was the only one talking. Everyone else was talking 401k. I was the only one talking cash balance. So I used to go to the ASPA, these big conferences, and everyone would have a booth on 401k, and I would be the lonely booth out there with cash balance. And that was my world for quite some time, and it sort of paid off. Now, let's fast forward today. Kravitz has become synonymous with cash balance, and we got very fortunate. The internet and those things took off at the exact same time that a small company like ours wanted to create a national brand. And I think it also helped that we came up with some innovative solutions in cash balance that it took a while for our competitors to figure out what we were doing and copy it. So that gave us also a competitive edge. And so I feel it's incumbent upon me at Future Plan to come up with new innovative solutions. So I'm looking ahead. There's going to be a new tax protocol in 2021, likely, or 2022. I guarantee you I'll be the first person out there with a webcast and an article about how to use cash balance to take advantage of the new tax law. Yeah,
I've been fascinated by the different firms that Future Plan is acquiring, including yours. And I kind of been painting the picture with our clients and prospects is, there's a dream team being built of cash balance actuaries, and we're a part of that. And I think that's really exciting for me because I've worked with plans where we had a single person doing all the actuary work. And the problem is, what if they go on vacation and we need a question answered? What if there's just so many reasons that one person can be a little bit of a sticky situation once in a while, and it can work. And I'm not saying that's not the worst case scenario, but the fact that you have a team behind you and you're working with Kravitz and Future Plan and other TPAs that have been acquired, that to me is a great partner. And I've been really pleased with that relationship. So I'm excited to see where it goes. I think it's exciting and it's a good thing for our industry as we start to see potential changes to the tax laws. I mean, it's just going to be a story that you need to understand. So I appreciate you so much, Dan, doing this today. It's been really good to get to know you better, and I'm excited to even spend more time chatting with you and maybe do some more plans together, most likely. And it's going to be great. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Thanks so much for the opportunity, Jake. Look forward to working with you and your listeners. And if I can be of any assistance and my team can be of any assistance to help financial advisors grow their business using cash balance, I'm here. And Jake, just one last comment, go Dodgers. Tonight's the big game.
That's right. That's right. It was a crazy ending of the last game. I'm excited to watch the next one.
Yeah. Yeah, I was at that game 7 that the Dodgers lost last time they were in. I watched that game in 1988 when we actually won. It's been 32 years. And so I got to tell you, I'm counting down. Hopefully I won't be crying tonight and I'll be celebrating. But go Dodgers. If you're not a Dodger fan, I apologize to those Tampa Bay fans.
No, I hear you. I went to a great conference at the Dodger Stadium with Ari Rosenbaum. I think even Kravitz had someone there. And we got to go on a tour.
Yep.
I mean, the history from the Dodgers is pretty fascinating, and it's going to be a good game no matter what. So, yeah, it'll be exciting.
Great. Thanks, Jake. Have a good day.
You too. Thanks, Dan.